For most of my 20s, I lived in a constant haze of stimulation. Podcasts in the shower, news feeds while waiting in line, YouTube during meals, half a dozen tabs open during work. There was never a moment when my brain wasn't being dosed with something. And this felt normal. After all, modern life encourages it. Why wouldn't you maximize every idle second? If you can listen to an audiobook while brushing your teeth, you're getting free education. If you can respond to Slack messages while sitting in an Uber, you're being efficient. Waiting in line with no entertainment feels like an act of self-sabotage. But after years of optimizing away my boredom, I started to feel like my thoughts weren't really my own anymore. They were fragments of tweets, refrains from songs, half-remembered podcast takes. My attention span felt like it had been stripped for parts. The moment a silence opened up, I reached for something to plug it. Until one day, waiting for a friend at a cafe, I realized I'd scrolled through the same 4 apps 3 times in under a minute. I wasn't even reading, I was just refreshing. And it hit me, my brain had become allergic to boredom. That was when I decided to experiment with doing the opposite. What if I leaned into boredom instead of fleeing from it? What if, instead of killing time, I let time do away with me, just a little? The first experiment was simple. I stopped avoiding the experience of waiting. For coffee, for lunch, for my Uber to arrive, for the doctor to see me. No headphones, no phone in my hand, just silence and a bit of liminal space. And at first this was agonizing. The urge to pull out my phone was visceral, like a smoker reaching for a lighter. My brain itched for input. I would sit legs bouncing, rehearsing the reasons why I should just check my email quickly. It was absurd how uncomfortable a few minutes of silence felt. After a few weeks deprived of external stimulus, my brain began to fill the vacuum on its own. I'd replay and analyze conversations I'd had. I'd notice details in the room I would otherwise ignore, the posture of other patients, the rhythm of the receptionist typing, the faint hum of the air conditioner. And then, gradually, my mind would wander further. I'd start connecting ideas, remembering half-buried problems from work, sketching outlines of solutions, without meaning to. It turns out boredom isn't empty. It's a medium in which thought can actually crystallize. Next, I cut out audio during walks. I used to treat walking as an excuse to catch up. Audiobooks, lectures, podcasts, and I justified this as multitasking, feeding my brain while moving my body. But apparently I had become almost incapable of taking a 10-minute walk without headphones. Silence felt like wasted potential. And worse, I was listening compulsively, not attentively. Entire chapters of books would pass without me remembering a single argument. So I gave it up. At least for a while. The first silent walks felt unbearably long. I counted blocks, I fidgeted, my brain screamed for input. But then the same shift happened. My thoughts, unoccupied, began to roam. I replayed old memories. I practiced things I wanted to say. I noticed how trees shifted in the wind, how storefronts changed week to week. And then creativity arrived. During one walk, I solved a problem that had nagged me for months. During another, I had an idea for a piece of writing that would become one of my best. And it might sound gross, but what I thought of as dead air was actually a kind of mental compost. Given enough stillness, ideas decomposed and reconstituted into something new. Pascal once wrote that all of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. And sitting quietly is hard, but walking in silence is its own kind of training. The third experiment was killing multitasking. I'd fallen into the trap of stacking, podcasts while cooking, YouTube while eating, articles while brushing my teeth. If there was an unoccupied sense, I crammed it with content. And so I stopped. Eating meant eating. Brushing teeth meant brushing teeth. And cooking meant cooking. It felt ridiculously inefficient. Why listen to sizzling onions when you could be catching up on The Economist? Why chew in silence when you could watch Netflix? But again, slowing down created a shift. Meals became more vivid. I noticed flavors. Cooking became almost meditative, a process rather than an obstacle. Even brushing my teeth felt oddly grounding, like a 2-minute reset. And somewhere in the middle of this sensory retraining, my brain got less twitchy, more willing to hold a thought for longer than 15 seconds. Here's what I started to realize. Boredom is a muscle, and if you don't use it, it atrophies. The constant drip feed of stimulation conditions your brain to expect novelty every few seconds. And then, when faced with tasks that require endurance, writing a long essay, debugging stubborn code, studying a difficult text, your mind revolts. It craves the dopamine of a new tab, a new headline, a new video. By intentionally embracing boredom, I was retraining my brain to tolerate slowness. Waiting rooms became mini boot camps. Walks became open space. Meals became practice in staying present. And the reward wasn't immediate. But over 30 days, I noticed I could sit and work longer without compulsively checking my phone. I could read more deeply without scanning. I could think through problems without breaking them into dopamine-sized chunks. Boredom, it turned out, was discipline in disguise. There's a reason ideas show up in the shower. It's one of the last places left where most people aren't scrolling. When the input stops, the brain starts free associating, and free association is where invention happens. Kierkegaard once said that boredom is the root of all evil, but also the root of all great deeds, and I think he was onto something. Boredom is uncomfortable because it forces you to sit with yourself. But that discomfort is also what generates movement. Your brain tries to escape the void by constructing, combining, imagining. By giving myself more void, I gave myself more material. The essays I wrote after starting this practice were sharper. The projects I launched were more coherent. Even my conversations improved. I had more to say because I'd actually been thinking rather than consuming. And I was better at listening because I'd become accustomed to listening for the unexpected. Sure, there are objections to this, and one is that boredom is a privilege. Who has the luxury to sit silently when you could be using that time to learn Mandarin? Isn't it wasteful to let hours pass without extracting value? But the productivity I gained from boredom outweighed the lost input. Listening to an audiobook distractedly doesn't actually make you fluent in a new language. Reading a dozen half-skimmed articles doesn't make you informed. But one clear insight born of quiet can reshape a whole life. Another objection: boredom is painful. God, that is true. That's why I call it rewiring. At first my brain rebelled and it felt like deprivation. But eventually the discomfort transformed into spaciousness, and what began as restless craving turned into calm attention. The deeper truth is that our era is structured to abolish boredom. Devices are engineered to fill every gap. Waiting rooms now have TVs, elevators play music, airports offer free Wi-Fi. You can spend your entire life without a single unstimulated minute. But what if boredom isn't the enemy? It's an organ. It's something essential to cognition, creativity, and discipline. And what if in trying to eradicate it, we've also weakened our ability to think? When I stopped fighting boredom, I discovered my brain was capable of more than I thought, because it finally had space. I don't want to oversell this. I didn't become a monk. I still listen to podcasts, I still scroll Twitter, and I still let YouTube autoplay. But I have created little islands of boredom in my day. 10 minutes here, a walk there, a meal in silence. And those islands have changed the rest of the map. I feel more disciplined, more creative, more present. I can sit with difficult work longer. I can think through problems more patiently. I can generate ideas instead of recycling them. I rewired my brain with boredom. Or maybe I just uncovered the wiring that was there all along, hidden under a tangle of notifications and feeds. Either way, the lesson feels simple. If you want to own your mind, you have to let it be bored sometimes. Because boredom, left alone long enough, has a way of turning into thought.